Hello, Iain
Hash.
from Urban Species here.
What's up?
We're at the British Library with Comics Unmasked, a fantastic, huge exhibition with over 200 comic books from over hundreds of years of history, isn't it?
Yep.
All celebrating the British writing talent, the British drawing talent. We're going to pop in, have a look, talk to some people.
What we did when we got to the stage where we knew roughly what we were going to have in the exhibition, we got a list of around 250 objects, a bit too many, but we got a list of about 250. We knew which themes we wanted to explore. We then thought, well, what do we do next? And what we decided to do was approach Dave McKean.
Excellent.
And yeah, he came up with this concept. So we're in an area on politics at the moment, which is based on the idea of corridors of power.
Right.
And if you go over to the area where the heroes are, that's the idea of artist studios. If you go to the area where mischief and mayhem is, you've got cases at all different angles. And then the bright colours, using the V for Vendetta mannequins and their masks.
With great effects.
Yeah, this is all Dave McKean's imagining of how this might work. And then unexpectedly, really, as we've approached opening day, he's come back. And he's been creating extra little things.
That's also a great first choice to go with, because I mean, with Dave McKean, you see from his art style, he thinks in this almost like kind of down the rabbit hole kind of terms.
The British Library always has interesting exhibitions, it always does. But when we were working with this subject, with comics, we realised we had the opportunity to do things we'd never done before. There's so much stuff I'd never seen before. And some disturbing stuff as well. We've got some Enid Blyton comic, which is really, it's racist.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, no, that's awful, you can't say that.
But it's a time capsule.
Absolutely. These ideas that British writers and artists have taken to DC, Marvel and other American publishers didn't just come from nowhere. They come from a long tradition of British heroes. What we're showing in the exhibition is how these heroes made the transition from Victorian popular literature, from penny dreadfuls and things like that, into comics. The thing that British heroes are a bit different is really important. Time and time again, they're not how you would expect. They're not morally sound, you know?
To say the least.
But you know, sometimes they're female. So, right, going back in time, and you know, in Britain we've always had female heroes in comics. You know, even you think of, say, Modesty Blaze, a female version perhaps of James Bond, and then, you know, Jamie Hewlett's Tank Girl, you know, Halo Jones. You know, that's all about seeing yourself in comics. You can see portrayal of women, the portrayal of different ethnic groups and religious groups. So if you've had a look at the piece of manga comic by Asia Al-Fassi, where she explores what it's like to be a Muslim in Scotland wearing a veil. We finished the bit looking at British heroes with a piece from Crisis, where you see a superhero, Dalton, you know, and he's a superhero and he's out there, you know, fighting the world and whatever. Where does he get attacked? Well, he's cruising in a gay sauna. You know, and that whole idea is very British, and that's what's influenced some of the writers and artists from Britain who have gone to America and introduced new ideas to the American superhero genre.
Much less so nowadays, which I think is a great thing. But generally, women almost have a fear of going into a comic store or getting into comics. But I think this exhibition is a good example of, you know, that being the opposite.
Yeah, we've looked for examples of comics that were created for women and comics that were created by women. So you can see right through the exhibition work by female writers and artists and publishers. And there is so much gay material. That's really interesting. One of the things we found quite interesting is how often gay campaigning groups, serious gay campaigning groups, and sort of gay erotica have used comic form to tell stories. They use it a lot. It's a very democratic thing, comic making, because if you've got some artistic talent and you've got some paper and a pencil and a photocopier, you can make comics and distribute them.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about them. And some of the material on display here is mainstream comics. A lot of what's on display here is small scale. Time and again there's been comics that got quite dangerous, and then there's been a pushback. And that's one of the things we look at. We actually pick on a couple of periods where that happens. We pick on the 1950s, when there was the arrival of lots of American horror comics,
favourite
republished.
Thurman.
Yeah, so they're republished for the British market. When we look at the Oz, the school kids issue, which was the subject of the longest ever obscenity trial in Britain, we've got audio from the courtroom because the judge permitted selected recording of the proceedings.
Wow.
So you can pick up a telephone next to us and listen to some of the evidence that was given by the defendants in court. And sometimes these kickbacks lead to interesting things. So the 1950s reaction against these horror comics, part of that was an Anglican vicar was behind the idea of creating Eagle comic, which has Dan Dare. And one of the things we're quite interested to show here is not only is Dan Dare mostly very wholesome, before he was actually published, so before issue 1, page 1, where he appears, the original concept for Dan Dare, he is actually Chaplain Dan Dare, and he's got a dog collar on, and you can see a piece of artwork in the exhibition from those days.
I didn't know
So
that.
he never got published like that, but that's what the original thinking was, and that's quite interesting. This continued pushing boundaries, and then there's the kickback.
More than any other comics industry in the world, British comics, even British, I feel almost the creators are almost unaware when they're doing it. Everything seems politically charged with British comics.
Yeah, you're pushing boundaries all the time. You're trying to represent views that you're not seeing somewhere else, and usually there's a political message behind that. As a result of doing this exhibition, we've been able to explore our collections here, and the collections are vast. There's 150 million objects in the British Library. Miles of shelving of stuff. There's no catalogue records. We've got all of those catalogued. We've discovered things that are missing that we just never collected when they came out. We've been out and bought them. We've got comic strips in newspapers going right back. We've got separately published comics for children or for adults. We've got Christmas supplements to newspapers, from the 19th century, are full of comic strips. And we've got, graphic novels. They just come flooding into the British Library. We've got them all. This is the place where you need to come. So that's for researchers, that's for the general public, and also for creators. Hopefully, comics creators will come in here and get inspiration for new ideas.